Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech video. I am still trying to catch up and record a few videos of my currently active decks before these change or get essentially rebuilt. I've been offline for quite some time, about a couple months, almost a year. So this deck right here is something I've been enjoying quite a bit. A while ago, about a year ago, I recorded a deck tech video for Jhoira of the V.2. It was because a friend specifically got me this exact card, a foily Modern Masters Jhoira. He thought I would like it and he was correct. Don't bother looking at the previous video if you don't need to. This deck runs the same combo. The major difference in this deck and that, the previous video ran a pile of counterspells, an obnoxious number of counterspells, to the point that it got a lot of hate. And because of that hate, Jhoira decided I just had to give her a break. And a while ago I decided to revisit her. So this is the deck currently. The deck currently has no counterspells. And that's a great thing to tell people so they don't hate me as much. I'll run through Jhoira real quick so you understand why she's the pilot of this deck. She is a 3-drop 1 blue-red for a legendary human wizard 2/2 body that has one ability. It is a 2 colorless mana. You can activate it anytime you want, like at the end of someone's turn. Then you exile a card from your hand that's not a land, like a planeswalker, a spell, or a creature. And it gains 4 suspend counters, which means on your upkeep, remove one. If it's a creature, or if there's none on there, you essentially cast it. If it's a creature, it gains haste. Common Jhoira decks, the common thing most people do is they will suspend a gigantic hard to deal with creature and a global destructive effect. Something like, here's an Ulamog, and then destroy everyone's creatures and lands. And because those 2 cards can come in on the same turn. My deck, I don't like doing that. I like doing things different from average. So mine is a time warp deck. A lot of people like putting cards in a Jhoira deck that help remove suspend counters. You know what's really good at removing a suspend counter? Taking an extra turn. And it draws you an extra card, you can untap your lands. It technically is the best way to remove a suspend counter. So that's what my deck does. It's a time warp themed deck. This time, instead of trying to just gun straight for a combo and counter lock people out of the game, I'm playing Wizard Tribal and lots of copy fun stuff. It has made the deck a bit more chaotic and less consistent, and a lot less protected against someone else's combo deck, but a lot more enjoyable. Jhoira honestly does not always need to be the general for this deck, but I choose to keep her because a buddy gifted it to me. Out of this Wizard Tribal deck, there are 21 other creatures. Most of the generals are in the deck, and I have frequently swapped her out to some of the others. So let's set them over here. We'll go through creatures first. Again, 21 other creatures past Jhoira. Some of these are great to have early. Some of these are even fine to suspend. Nin the Paint Artist is probably the most competitive general ever. Like, it's literally you play the draw go game, and then you get her out and protect her for a turn, and then you just refill your hand. That's usually how these decks go. Those decks, Nin decks go. I love Nin. I love those type of decks. My friends, my opponents hate those types of decks. So Nin's in this deck for funs and shits and giggles. I can drop her on turn 2. I could suspend her with Jhoira, so she comes in with haste and I can use her immediately. Snaps in here, it's just generically good. Again, this is a time warp deck, and there's lots of ways of rebuying time warps. That's why he's here. Lighthouse Chronologist is here because, again, it's a time warp deck. This guy eats removal really fast. Same thing, Echo Mage, DMX, whatever you want to call him, he tends to just eat removal really fast. The deck is full of copy and reverberate effects. I've dumbed it down a little bit with adding so many of these effects. I am perfectly aware that to make the deck streamlined and more competitive and functional, that these should be... There's no brainstorm or ponder or telling time, anticipate. Those should be in the deck. They're not. And if you like this idea and you want to make it stronger, get those cards. Melita's Charlatan is another one that can tap to make a controller copy a spell. Again, this is something that I don't mind suspending with Jhoira because he will come in with haste. This is really clever because if he comes in on the same turn a time warp effect does, I can choose to have him come off to suspend and resolve, and then I can choose this one, so I could then use his ability to copy the next card coming off suspend. So these 2 coming off suspend on the same turn, I can use him to copy this and get an extra time warp. That is why they're pretty good. I can't do that with Echo Mage because he has to be leveled up at sorcery speed. Magus is a big draw effect. He's definitely going to be in here. I actually have almost all the Maguses of the colors in here. Dualcaster is just another copy effect. Jhoira is terrible for this deck. She is here because I wanted to have some more early drops or a general I could swap out early. I can suspend her and another card, and I can have her come off suspend first, and the other card will trigger her draw. But she's more or less here actually for Azami fodder. There's an Azami in the deck. It helps me dig to and for a lab ban win. And the more wizards the Azami enables. This is not an all-in Azami deck, but Azami does help Laboratory Maniac wins. Azami tends to die really fast too. Most of my friends have figured this out. Venser is one of the only answers we have in the deck to spells. Archaeomancer helps us rebuy a specific spell we need, usually a Time Warp. Husher is another pseudo answer. We can stop something like a Planeswalker ability, a fetch land, something like that. It's really cute to rebuy. I just love Husher. Glenalandra, I guess, is a technical counterspell. She's here more or less just to be a protective blocker. I've actually used her to chump block more than I've probably used to counter. Really good at slowing the aggro, getting someone's big scary beat stick or Voltron in general. Azami is a powerhouse. If you've never played against a powerful Azami wizard power deck, the draw power here is immense. Most of the time when this deck is sputtering out, I'll just try to get a few wizards out and find Azami, and then she gets me right back in the game. Especially when you can spam a Time Warp or two, because all of a sudden with her you're digging about 4 or 5 cards per turn. Magus of the Future is Future Sight. It is card advantage. Teferi is another pseudo control element. With the new commander products, Yidris is everywhere. And this is another just generically good answer to Cascade. Magus of the Jar is a memory jar that has summoning sickness. Another way of returning spells. I just got to pick up another Time Warp. A way of copying spells off the top of our deck. To date, the most Time Warps I have been able to stack, or extra turns I've been able to stack at once, is I think 17. Mainly because of him. That's kind of dumb and gross. And Arcanus is another great thing to suspend off of Jhoira. He comes in with haste, so you can immediately draw those 3 cards. And those are all the wizards. So as you saw, my creatures are pathetically small. The biggest creature, I think, is actually Teferi, maybe, in size. Yeah, it's a bad. Now, the deck is, again, a Time Warp deck, so we have to have the Time Warps. Here are the technical Time Warps. A card I will want to get. They just printed Temporal Manipulation. It has been a Judge foil for a while now, but they just did another series of printings. So that has actually made it drop in price pretty significantly. I have 2 non-foil ones in decks and storage, but want one for this deck. Savor at the moment is Explore, like 1 in a green, draw a card, play in a land. That's usually what this turns out to be. Most of the Time Warps in the deck actually end up being Explore, because what this deck needs is just the mana to hard cast the spells to then take over the game. So this is Explore. Plead for Power is usually a draw 3. It could be a Time Warp, but it's usually draw 3. There is the classic Time Warp. Part the Water Veil is another Time Warp that exiles itself, which is sad. Walk the Aeons is a 6-drop Time Warp. I don't like buying this back, because again, the deck can just win by having the mana to hard cast its own spells. Temporal Mastery is something you can top deck tutor, so you can miracle it, but again it exiles itself, which is sad. Beacon of Tomorrows is the combo spell. It shuffles in. I'll explain the combo when we get there. Another Time Warp that exiles itself. Another card that exiles itself. This is confusing, but it's great. It's 9 mana, so this is usually coming off Jhoira. This new version of Council's Dilemma, no matter what, I get the vote of time or money, which is take an extra turn, or Blatant Thievery, take a permanent of somebody's. No matter what, I always get to choose for myself, which is Time Warp, or take an extra turn, but then it goes around for each opponent. So if there's like 4 opponents, then there's 4 different choices. Either I can take something of theirs or Time Warp for each opponent in the game. This makes people really not happy. The obviously goody is Time Stretch. It just takes 2 extra turns. This is great when you can get off Jhoira. It gives you time to set up a draw machine on the first turn, the second turn to rebuy and recast something. Then we're on to the rest of the spells. The deck is chunked full of spells. We have some protective spells. We don't have a lot of removal, but we have Cyclonic Rift for bounce, and bounce, and bounce. That's really the only way the deck can survive. This is not really a time warp, but this can essentially act like one. I love cards like this. One of my favorite cards is Mana Short, because on someone's upkeep, you're essentially just time warping them out of the game. But this one right here can act as a pseudo counter spell. It can remove something off the stack. There's just a lot of things this thing can do. Fact or Fiction, we're onto our draw. This digs us 5 deep, could dig us a little bit deeper. The piles are slightly awkward. This needs to not be in the deck. There's a Mizzix Mastery in the deck, and there's 3 cards in the deck that shuffle my graveyard into the deck. That's not good. This needs to be a Wheel of Fortune or a Reforge the Soul. Big draw spell. This is not something you want to suspend off Jhoira unless you have to, because you only get the rebound if it's cast from hand. Time Spiral is one of the cards that reshuffles graveyard in. This is one that's a keeper for damn sure. This is one of the most powerful cards in the game. A lot of people just hate seeing this because it's pretty broken. This is the other card that should not be in the deck. This is one that should be Wheel of Fortune or Reforge the Soul, because to entwine it, you shuffle the graveyard in. That's not actually good. Like this deck, I want a big nasty graveyard because Mizzix Mastery is a technical win condition. But I could use this to empty everyone's hand. For example, if I have Jhoira coming out and I have a big draw 7 for myself coming up, I can draw a lot of cards after I dump everyone's hand. Meh. This is just another janky, stupid piece of shit that everyone hates. This is the combo enabling spell, or one of them. It can dig us straight into our entire deck, and we can set up whatever kind of win condition we want, be it Lab Man or the Beacon combo. So I'll explain that shortly. We have some spell recursion. Again, this is great at rebuying a used spell if we need, like a Time Warp. Same thing. Same thing. This one we like overloading, because overloading the spell, which means you get every single card out of your graveyard. That's an instant sorcery. Everything's exiled for, like all the spells are exiled, but you cast them all. The dumb thing on this card, the really dumb thing, is this has the word cast. So if you're playing Storm, for example, by the way, I have been like building Storm decks like ass. I have about 4 different Storm lists I've been running, and I'll share those videos shortly. But since this has the word cast, it adds to your Storm count. So if, for example, you can order these spells in any way you want, if there's a last spell in your graveyard you choose as a Storm spell, it gets gross. That is actually why this deck runs a single Mind's Desire. But that's more for funsies. My Storm decks, I will show those videos. But this is in here mainly just to keep buying back Time Warps. We have a few Tutors, Top Deck Tutor. These two are great at getting the Miracle Time Warp, essentially turning into a Explorer if we need to early. Or they're also really good at setting up with Niv Mizzet. No, not Mizzet. Shit, whatever his name is. The Paron, the guy that plays the spells off the top of your deck. Intuition is usually used to get whatever copy of a spell I need. 3 Reverberate effects, 3 Time Warps, 3 lands. I don't really have a way of breaking it too bad in this deck other than just filling the graveyard. Then we have the copy effects. Again, if you like this idea of a deck, do not play these. You want to get some kind of card filtering or selection to help your early game. Just get the Brainstorms, Ponders, something like that. That's just much, much better, because half of these are dead half of the time. Even the creatures, like the Echo Mage or the Charlatan, those are just removal bait. But if you have something that can help you set up your combos or search for specific cards, like an Impulse or something like that, those are just infinitely better than these. I'm keeping these in here because this is a deck I've already dumbed down by removing the counter magic. I really enjoy what this deck tries to do, but I hate making my opponents hate my decks. So I'm playing these for fun. So we have these, Twin Cast, and this one only hits my spells. But again, if I have something coming off suspend, I can copy it. I can then try to flash it back 2 more times. Reiterate is a buyback copy. Spell Twine is a type of copy. It copies a spell from my graveyard and opponents. It requires a target in each, otherwise you cannot cast it. There's the Mind's Desire. Again, this is not a Storm deck. This is in here just for fun. The most I've gotten this up to was suspending it off of Jhoira with like 4 other cards, and then in my hand I held up 2 Reverberate effects, And literally on the time I was letting everything come off suspend, I was able to copy some shit, so I got like a storm count of like 8, I think. It wasn't that impressive, but I mean, most people don't want to watch this go off, so they just scoop. This is not actually themed with the deck. This is just a generically good card. It's really good to get on Jhoira because it can get you whatever really seems necessary at the time. You can get someone's ramp, removal, just whatever. And we're on to the permanents. The two enablers for this, again, I've explained this in multiple videos, but the two enablers to help cheat these things out, there's Dream Halls and Omniscience. Both are very broken cards. What they do, Dream Halls is a 5-drop enchantment. Any player can discard a card of whatever color to cast a card of whatever color. So for example, I can discard this shitty blue spell and cast this great blue spell for free. The issue, although, is this has to be at the legal speed of the card. So on my turn, I want to try to put up something like Teferi. Like if I can flash out Teferi, that means that no one else is going to be able to use this unless they have something on board to kill Teferi with. And that usually just means I'm going to win the game. I can try to cycle through my whole deck or draw big cards and whatever it takes to get to what I need. Omniscience is the one that does not require to be discarded, a card to discard. You can even use one of these to get the other one out and then put Teferi to have like a soft lock. There's just some dumb broken blue cards. Like, if you don't know how dumb and stupid this card is, I'm sorry, but you may need to be exposed to more idiotic and just dumb combo decks. Omniscience is pretty busted. It just lets you cast whatever you want for free from your hand. And that's actually it. I'll set those up there with the combo. We have not a lot of ramp in this deck. There is 3. This is here because I like having infinite hand size and 2 1-drops. Again, the deck is made more casual because I don't want to have disgusting early starts. The last card here is Mirari. This is again something I can suspend off Jhoira. So if there's 2 cards coming off of suspend on the same turn, I can have this resolve first, and then this can come out and resolve second, and this will already be in play, so I can use this to copy this. Pretty dumb. Like, this is a permanent that usually doesn't last long. It's really expensive, and this is pretty clunky most of the time because sometimes I want to cast it early and sometimes I don't know when to cast it. If you like this deck, what this deck is doing, don't bother with the copy stuff. Just get more streamlining effects, more card filtering, and card draw. Let's go back to the combo and I'll re-explain this just in case you are unfamiliar. It can win with a few ways. The biggest and easiest is using 2 like this and one of these 2 to try to draw my entire deck. The enablers there's a lot of ways this can go. But in short, I can use all the wheel effects, all those big draw spells, whatever I have, using one of these to keep on digging, or I can use a zombie. A zombie is a very powerful draw engine in here. And then if I can have my whole deck in my hand, then I can either just use Labman and try to draw another card, or I can take infinite turns with Beacon. The ongoing issue, although, is there's way more. People tend to scoop before it even gets to that because once you start ramping up multiple turns on top of each other, it seems inevitable that I'm going to win. There's also, I forgot the lands. Let's go there real quick. I am missing, this is not supposed to be in the deck. I am missing 2 mountains. I only have 2 mountains in the deck. I have not actually put a lot of effort into pimping the land base, which I usually do with my decks, if you've noticed. But this is literally just a whole bunch of basics I picked up from the shop, and I meant to pick up 4 mountains, and I only got 2. So this is supposed to be a mountain. And then we have some generic utility lands. It's a draw discard, it's pretty good. There's a new one actually that just came out that's a little bit better than Sanatorium, I believe. I need to get that. A utility, infinite hand size. Technical win condition. If I am taking infinite turns, I can kill someone with Jhoira. Riptide Laboratory is another combo piece because if I have any time warp in my graveyard and I have either the Archaeomancer or is it Chronarch, I can, if I have enough mana, I can continue to bounce them and pick up the time warp and take an extra turn. So it's another infinite turn combo. Again, this is used to save any creature really. I have 21 creatures plus general equals 22 creatures this could save. Mirror Pool is another come into play tapped copy land. A lot of people completely miss this. And it's great because you can just play it out early and then out of nowhere you have a free copy effect. It's also really good as safe Teferi. A lot of people like killing Teferi, and I've used this quite a few times to create a token of Teferi when people try to spot removal him. Then we have the colorful lands. We have untap land, untap land, untap land, most likely untap land, possibly a tap land, maybe a tap land late, definitely a tap land. Then we just keep on going downhill from here. Taps, just colorful lands. This one's pretty shitty. And a creature land. This is new. I'm really happy they printed this cycle. And a temple for filtering. And then we have a few fetchies. Again, I don't have any expensive fetch lands in here. The land base probably could use some work. But gets 2 basics. Usually these 2 go get a mountain, again, because they need to be more mountains in the deck. There are only 2. I hate saying this to the opponents because they'll just probably go kill one out of spite. I need to pick up at least 2 more mountains. And the rest are just a pile of the islands. I think what I'm going to do is get the Arcadian Mask promo lands for those, because I think the border would look nice with Jhoira. But yeah, this is my Jhoira of the G2 deck, version 2, with almost no counter magic and control. It has very little interaction with the opponents. It is just a big old dirty time warp deck. A lot of opponents hate playing against these decks. The issue is it feels like it takes forever. The best thing to do if you have interest is to practice. Try to goldfish this as much as possible, because if you can turn your time warps into an explore, where you draw and play an extra land, if you can make those turns go real fast, then it's not as much of a bearable, like an unbearable experience for the opponents. These decks are great and they're very fun to play, but if you're slow, they become obnoxious, and then you get a lot of hate. But yeah, if you have any feedback about Jhoira, let me know. I am going to be posting this and a few other videos shortly. Hope you have a good one. Cheers.